Okay, thank you.
It started now.
All right, appreciate it. I mean, I don't appreciate you recording it, but thank you for doing it. All right, so good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Friday morning call at the end of week 4 of the 9-week session. So not quite the halfway point. You should have received the lobby tools report on the environmental bills yesterday evening. If you have not, somebody please say something. We'll make sure that gets sent out. Came out about 6 p.m. yesterday. You're looking at my screen with that report, and as always, it's ordered by bill action. So the bills that have had the latest actions on them are at the top, and about half of these have had some activity this week. We had a few committees take up bills this week. I went to a couple of them, including the House Infrastructure Committee subcommittee on Monday, where the stormwater ratification bill for the House was heard for the first time. So I'll report on that later. We'll save the stormwater ratification comments for the end. Next week, we've got several bills up on committees on Monday, and then the 2 stormwater ratification bills are up on Thursday. Again, I'll save all the stormwater comments for one time, but we'll go ahead and get started. And if anybody has questions, just raise your hand or speak out and stop me, and I'll try to answer your question right away or get back to you. All right. So without further ado, the mitigation bill by TrueNow, which relaxes requirements on who can mitigation banking on public lands. There are a couple of mitigation initiatives happening this year. All of them seem to be moving forward to support the kind of the industry demand for more availability of wetland mitigation credits, and to make more types of lands available for use for mitigation credits. I think there's a sentiment out there that with public lands off limits, that maybe there could be a shortage of good land to create banks. So anyway, a few things moving, including TrueNow's mitigation bill this week. It's up next week in House Ag and Natural Resources on Monday. This mangrove replanting and restoration bill is also up on Monday. This would create the rules or allow DEP to adopt rules for mangrove replanting and restoration. House Bill 789 was heard this week and passed through Ag and Natural Resources Approach Subcommittee. It was pretty controversial. You could see the 10-5 split more or less on party lines. I watched this bill. It was heard on the same committee as the DEP bill. And the controversy is coming from the trial attorneys who are concerned about some limitations of liability that are provided for property owners and permittees who are operating their stormwater system or cleanup system or whatever they have. If they're in permit compliance, they would not be liable for real or personal property damages. And that limitation of liability has got the trial attorneys agitated, and they came out in force against that bill. But it did pass through. It will be in infrastructure strategies next. The waste reduction and recycling plan bill made some movement this week. We'll be advancing. This is a revision to the current recycling goals of 75%. This would be a revision of that, developing new comprehensive waste reduction goals. Anyway, it's moving. Here's the House stormwater ratification bill number. It's been a committee bill until now. Now it's House Bill 7053. It did pass the infrastructure strategy. It passed the water quality supply and treatment subcommittee on Monday. and is on referred to House Infrastructure Strategies Committee, which is meeting next week on Thursday. There was no action on the Senate version, but it is also up next Thursday. The Senate will be on appropriations, on ag, environment, and general government, which is like the subcommittee appropriations equivalent in the Senate. Let me see. I'm going to skip a couple. The water well contractor license bill by Trumbull did move this week and is being advanced to rules for next week. The environmental management bill, which is the other, it's the companion bill to the Overdorf bill that I just mentioned that has the trial attorneys upset. That bill also made it through the Senate. One more Senate committee stop this week. It has one more reference before it will go to the floor. So it's moving as well, also with some, not unanimous. So I suspect the trial attorneys are pushing back on that as well. Skipping this one, there's no activity this week. No activity in the Senate stormwater ratification. I think we're kind of wrapping up on bills that made actions this week. I just want to point out, I'm going to take this one off the list. This blue economy evaluation bill by Pizzo was withdrawn. I'm going to remove this from our tracker. And I think there was just one more. Oh yeah, 1557 is actually not on our tracker list. The companion bill is, but the House bill, this is the DEP kind of train-like bill. It's got a few provisions in there. The House version 1557, which will be on the tracker next week, it passed through House approach subcommittee this week. And I believe that is everything that had some action this week. So does anybody have any questions on bills before I switch over to stormwater? Okay. You're right, Alan. People are getting worn down. All right. So as I mentioned, the stormwater ratification bill in the House was introduced and passed through its first committee on Monday. Both that House Bill 7053 and the Senate Companion 7040 are in identical posture, meaning all the words are the same. So provided they both make it through, well, actually, the first of the bill to make it through all the committees and make it on the floor could be passed, and the alternate version can be laid on the table, is what they call it, when the House or Senate decides, which bill is going to be the one presented to the governor. Now that both bills have made it through one committee stop by the rules, only one bill has to make it all the way off the floor, and then it simply is presented to the other chamber for vote on the floor, and then it can go to the governor. So they're definitely every indication is they're going to pass, and there is still a little bit of chatter about some potentially more tweaks related to the grandfather provision that was expanded in the ratification bill. Would it help anybody on this call? Has anybody not been through the 4 changes in the ratification bill and understand what that does to the rule? Anybody like me to recap that?
I've got a comment on something I learned with the committee stop Monday. The conceptual approvals are not getting the same 1-year delay. Their conceptual approval is going to be in place when the bill is passed, which is, I know Kelly was surprised at it. I was surprised at it. I didn't know that. Why can you have, 1-year delay for permit applications, but exclude conceptuals.
Well, let me address the effectiveness date issue. So I talked to the
Yeah.
DEP secretary and deputy secretary. They both pointed out. So I asked them two things about it. One is it appears that the effectiveness date is when the bill is signed by the governor, which would be an unknown date. And there are things that would become effective the minute that rule becomes effective. And so I said, I thought y'all were planning on doing this in July 1. That gives people time to plan. And they said, yes, that is the case. And they expect that change to happen at the next committee stop. So thing one that you're concerned about, Bob, about, having something happen, the minute it's approved, that's going to get changed to July. Now, it is still July of 2024 that the rule would become effective. And you are correct that the rule as adopted, finalized last year and filed with the Department of State in April, it has always distinguished between conceptuals and grandfathering versus the extended year for individual and general permits. That has always been the case. That isn't new or different. The way the department is treating conceptuals is like grandfather projects. So they're saying that to be effective for your conceptual or your grandfather status, or any other grandfather status, it has to be, your conceptual application has to be complete, or your current, if you're in one of the grandfathering categories, that would be a current valid permit, whether it's a current valid conceptual or current valid individual, and certainly all the permits that have already been issued, all of those are grandfathered in, provided there's no major modifications, et cetera. So with all those regular grandfather caveats, the reason the department, that as explained to me by Coates when they made that distinction, in the last year, is conceptual permits have these really long extended timeframes, and so they did not want to extend the time frame to extend the opportunity to create extended grandfathered projects. And so they said, we're cutting off conceptuals with the grandfathering, with the effective date. Now for new projects that are not covered under a conceptual, they still have that opportunity to utilize the current water quality standards for an additional year. So the extended runway is not for the entire rule. The extended runway, which is kind of how that delayed effectiveness date is being described, that's just to the water quality standards in Section 8 of the applicant's handbook. So the rest of the rule would become effective, which your project doesn't have to meet the new water quality standards for a new IP or GP until 1 year after the effective date, or July 1, 2025.
Yeah, I just didn't know that.
It's pretty nuanced. I mean, that's an explanation that probably 99% of the legislature doesn't understand. Okay, one more thing about the ratification bill that was news. I got confirmation from DEP on this, and that it is actually, this is what the bill analysis says, but it is definitely not clear. Gary Ward and others have circulated an email that appears, and I had the same interpretation. I asked this question of DEP directly because I was confused by it. The second to last section in the ratification bill has language that suggests that any future changes to the applicant's handbook have to be brought back to the legislature for approval. And that is actually not what it says. If you read it very carefully, it says any future changes to these sections of the applicant's handbook would have to be brought back to the legislature. And so that is explained a little better in the bill analysis than it is in the bill itself. DEP's acknowledged that it's not clear, that the words could be better. And in fact, Jessica Kramer asked me if our folks are concerned about that we could write a letter, an email, a memo, something to send to DEP that they could share with legislative staff and ask them to clean up that language. But so to be clear, and I'll restate it one more time, let me just go ahead and pull it up. I think that would help, so that y'all could look at it while I'm talking. 70, 40, I'll just pick one of these. It's identical language, so it doesn't matter which one you look at. Okay, this language right here, the bill provides that any future changes to those portions of the applicant's handbook that are amended by the bill must be submitted in bill form for approval. Such amendments would only become effective upon approval by act of the legislature. So this is what is actually true. It's just the future changes to those portions amended by the bill. It's not all of it. But the way the bill language looks is this: any future amendments to those portions of the applicant's handbook incorporated by rule. This is the rule reference. This is what makes the applicant's handbook a rule. And most people stop reading this. Any future amendments to those portions of the applicant's handbook included in the subsection must be submitted in bill form to the speaker and the president for approval. That we all thought, I think a lot of people that read this thought that meant the applicant's handbook, any changes would have to be ratified. And that's not the case, but it is not clear. I mean, it could be worded better. So I don't know if anybody has any real heartburn about asking for some cleanup here, but I mean, now that I know what they intended, I can see it, that it doesn't say any future amendments of any kind. It just says any future amendments that are included in the subsection. So those words are in there. But anyway, that should clear that up. And then this last piece, they're going to update this. They're going to change this to July 1. Because DEP itself has gone back to committee staff and said, we need time to prepare for this. This is not something where on a Friday we can be implementing one law, and on a Monday we can be implementing one rule, and on Monday we can be implementing a different rule. We need to be ready for it. So expect to see that change next stop. This may or may not be tweaked. The rest of it is not changing right now, except or at least there's no changes that I've seen yet. But the grandfathering section A of this bill, there may be other amendments to this grandfathering section. So what I have heard about is some concerns from developers who have entitled a project through, it wouldn't be a DRI because those would be very old and grandfathered, but like a some kind of PUD or a density transfer, under a density transfer credit program in some that some local governments have. If there are locked in design elements related to density or number of lots or overall impervious area or any of those things that are locked into a PUD, they may or may not have any ERP attached to them. So if they don't, even a conceptual, then they would not have any grandfathering status. But if those PUDs are not grandfathered, then they could be impacted by the rule, lose density. That changes the deal. That could look like or could actually be a regulatory taking, which would subject that local government to a takings claim. And so there appears to be some chatter about trying to include that type of scenario in the grandfathered status. That is the only change I'm hearing about that has traction.
Beth, this is Lynn Walker. I did have a question, and it may be off topic. Senate Bill 1692, the Preventing Contaminants of Emerging Concern. So this is industrial pretreatment, and it's got to deal with PFAS and 1,4-dioxane. So in the draft language, there's interim levels that are being proposed. How does it work where, I think it was last year, PFAS, the state couldn't take enforcement action under PFAS until 62777 was updated. How does that correlate with this bill adding discharge limits for industrial users?
This is a great question. Not off topic at all. I've heard a lot of chatter about this, and your question has been the nature of that chatter. It is still the case, and Senator Broder has been engaged by kind of the PFAS coalition of affected industries and DEP about this. So his intention was not to disrupt or alter that schedule that you just described. There would be no DEP enforcement, no pursuit of additional site assessments for PFAS until such time as PFAS standards have been established by the state. That is still true. However, what Broder said he is trying to address is there are receivers of PFAS or maybe receivers of PFAS from industrial dischargers that are subject to pretreatment permits or pretreatment requirements before those industrial dischargers, before their liquid waste go to a wastewater facility. And those wastewater facilities are looking for some opportunity to impose limits on known contaminants like dioxane, like PFAS. And so this is a very Broder. I'm not defending the bill, but I'm telling you what Broder's position is that he wanted to create some opportunity for folks subject to industrial pretreatment permits, for those folks to have standards imposed for dioxane and PFAS. And I think it's addressing an individual discharger in Seminole County is what I've also heard.
I think the intent is really good. It's the back end of it. Those limits are much higher than the current provisional CTLs that are offered. And it just seems like it opens up that municipality and wastewater treatment when somebody says, you've been accepting this and it's going through your system. Now show me how you've treated it on the opposite end. Just looking forward and thinking about how we address risk in the future.
Totally fair, and happy to continue the conversation offline. They're being looked at differently is kind of the short version is if you're pre-treating into a treatment facility, these are the standards that he's imposing. Discharging out of that treatment facility, those are going to be subject to state water quality standards, different standards, which are going to be more stringent. Anybody else have any more questions, any issues, other bills, anything you want me to look up for you?
Hey, Jeff, it's Danielle. How are you?
Hey, Danielle. Good.
I have a question about Senate Bill 32, which is the mangrove planting one.
Sure.
So it's a really short bill, and it's focused on Biscayne Bay, and it references the Mangrove Trimming and Preservation Act, but it does not trigger changes to the ERP rule. And when a project requires a permit, which most mangrove planting along a shoreline does, then the Mangrove Trimming and Preservation Act does not apply, and the mangroves get regulated under the ERP rule. So I'm really disappointed it doesn't trigger 373, the ERP rule, specifically. but also it does not trigger the aquatic preserve rules, because most of the mangroves that are being planted there are triggered or are regulated under 1818 Florida Administrative Code, which is under 258 for the Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve. And so if you don't also hook those regulations, then the effectiveness of this is pretty moot, because and a lot of the projects that are getting funded by DEP and their Resilient Florida program are funding living shoreline projects, including many in the Biscayne Bay that will have to get an ERP. So this is not going to be helpful for that type of situation. I think it's a step in the right direction, but mangroves are still being significantly overregulated compared to bulkheads. So this change is going to fall flat, in my opinion, unless it also triggers the ERP rule and, the ERP statute, and also the Biscayne Bay Aquatic Preserve statute, and affects rule changes in those as well. So I was wondering if you had heard any, you said it's up on Monday.
Yeah. No, I haven't heard anything. That's an Alex or a Laney or an Adam call to find out what their strategy is. I mean, it's possible that since this is simply a rulemaking authority and direction, that DEP may take its rulemaking authority under the statute and write a rule that also brings in or addresses ERP requirements. I don't know that I think they could do that.
Thanks.
I'll try to find out for you, Danielle.
Jeff, I got one quick question too, Scott here.
Yes, sir.
What is the timing of the change for the applicant handbook 2 once the applicant handbook 1 gets ratified?
I think it will be on effective date. That's what
Okay.
I've heard. I think all of the applicant handbook 2 changes have been adopted, and their effectiveness date is delayed, triggered by the effectiveness date of applicant's handbook 1.
Okay, so they would take effect right away and not have a year delay.
But remember what they're for, though. They're gonna, they're going to impose the district specific criteria. But if applicant's handbook 1 says section 8 of the applicant's handbook containing the standards are not effective for another year, then I think those portions of 2 that are related to the imposition of those standards, I think they would naturally be delayed as well. Like there would be no regulatory reason to go to 5580 because applicant's handbook says you can continue to use presumptive criteria until 2025. Then I think those provisions of applicant's handbook 2 that are related to the 5580 or the 8080 or the 95, whatever, right? So many new percentages we're all going to have to learn. I think because all of those get delayed for another year, then I think the provisions of 2 that relate to those new standards would also be delayed. But thank you for bringing that up. I will make sure there's no way that can't be true. I just want to make sure the words in applicant's handbook 2 are correct,
Sure.
so that that reflects reality.
Yeah, and I know there's some other changes outside of the water quality that at least Swiftmut's proposed in applicant handbook 2.
Oh yeah, like all of the O&M requirements, all the inspection requirements are going to start kicking in, like not retroactively, but for new projects. So that extended runway is just for the standards. It is not for any other part of the rule.
Right. Yeah, that's what I understood and want to make sure I got that right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, coming up on 9:30. Anybody else? Anything else for the good of the order? All right, y'all. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. As always, please shoot me an email, give me a call if you have any questions or everything comes up. And hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.